Hello and welcome to the East and Kicks podcast, a regular magazine programme about East Asian film led by me, Andrew Heskins, founder and grandmaster of eastkicks.com, and James Mudge, our leading writer.
Hey up.
Each episode we'll be taking a look at the latest films, news and festivals, often chatting to filmmakers and stars along the way. Welcome to the latest episode. Once again, we're going to be running through our East and Kicks picks for March and early April, a curated selection of the new and upcoming releases across streaming services and cinemas. But first, we need to ask that very important question. What are you drinking this episode, James?
Well, I've got a couple bottles of Shepherd Neam's Kentish Strong Ale 1698, 6.5%. So I don't know, I haven't had it before. I'm still relatively, not new, but relatively inexperienced when it comes to know my way around ales. But it's not an IPA in the American sense, so I'm quite happy with it.
No, good, no, God, no. A lot of hazy IPAs.
Oh, nice bit of citrus, because that's all IPAs ever taste of. You can dress it up by calling it tropical. You can call it lemony, citrusy,
I mean, those are trigger words for me once they start saying tropical, grapefruit.
No. Yeah.
Like, okay, pass, hard pass.
I mean, I don't mind having one, but even like going on a session of them, they all just blur into the same thing.
Yeah,
you know, after a while, it's
because they're very heavy as well. They're so
yeah.
You know, that's kind of there's my taste buds gone.
No, there's nothing good about them.
Yeah. So I'm on a Erdinger Weiss beer here.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not a Weiss beer man, but you know, it's a solid enough choice. But here we go. We pour my first one out, and there we go.
Cheers.
All right then. Yeah, here's to you. Oh, that's quite nice.
So let's catch up on what's been going on. So as we are recording this, we've just had the Oscars,
Yeah.
and there were a few things to spot there. I believe that the visual effects team won an Oscar for Godzilla -1.
Yes, fair enough award. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of the film. I don't know, it's an interesting one, I suppose, because so much of the chat we got about the effects was not really specifically focused on the quality of the effects, but the cheapness of the effects compared to Hollywood. I mean, without diving into, you know, the sort of different levels of don't quite agree with some of the reporting on the way that was. It's an interesting one to get the effects, because they're certainly good. At least for the Godzilla attack scenes, they're pretty good. There's some actually really dodgy CGI in the film as well. Not for the creature design, which is all very good, but I don't know. It just became such a point of conversation, which we sort of touched upon in some previous episode, where you know we had all those headlines saying, "Oh, why can't Hollywood make a film that looks this good for 30 million or whatever it was?" Yeah, ignoring the fact that the complete difference between the American and Japanese industries and economies of scale. So it's interesting. I don't know. It's nice to see it winning the Oscar, even though I wasn't a massive fan of the film. It's quite fun to have Godzilla winning an Oscar, and I suppose thinking of a series which so many folk kind of got into specifically because the effects were awful. You know, seeing like the men in the suits and having a good laugh on that side of things. No, absolutely. It's when they didn't take itself quite so seriously as it does now, seriously or nationalistically, perhaps. But it's kind of funny seeing a series which has gone from those roots, in which a lot of people would still look back, and whatever for a lot of people, whatever the craftsmanship went into designing the kaijus and the sets which were being knocked over, for a lot of people, Godzilla films will still be a kind of slightly wacky, watch when you're stoned or drunk type of thing, laughing at man in a suit, which is fun. I don't even mean that in a bad way. It is very funny. But going from that to now winning the best special effects Oscars, quite interesting. But yeah, whatever my feelings on the film are, it is always good to see something like that getting a bit of international recognition.
Yeah, and there was another award for Japan as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, the boy and the heron. I don't know. I didn't like that too much either. But then I'm not really the target audience for that one myself. I'm not a massive fan of the Ghibli films, and I thought this was. Have you seen it? No.
No, I haven't.
I'm not going to give any spoilers at all. But it does. It's not abstract, but just a bit sort of layered in a confusing way. I think you could either take it as being an incredibly simple and quite silly story, or some people I've seen as, oh, this is one of the most philosophical works of art ever made. It's a beautiful story about the cosmos, blah, 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 which I didn't really get either part of it. I thought it was convoluted. I thought it just didn't... I could see some of the abstract elements, but they just felt half-baked to me. So, I don't know. But it is long as well. It's 2 hours plus, so I don't know. But again, I would rather see that winning than something. I don't even know what the other nominations are because I don't really follow the animation scene very much. But it was probably...
No, I mean, I think we had one of the Spider-Mans, and I think I don't think it's been a massively... Right. Not for the sort of animations that end up at the Oscars. I don't think it's been a massively interesting year for...
Yeah, I would imagine it's probably the one of the, or maybe the only nomination, which was a slightly more serious thing rather than just a straightforward commercial one. I mean, I'm not a fan of those Spideyverse things and everything like that, but I don't know, this would be a longer discussion, but I guess animated Oscar probably most of the time ends up not being judged in the same way. You know, like you judge like Best Picture, whether you agree with the Oscars or not, it's supposed to be judged on all these different levels of, you know, merit and quality, not just directing, but also not the seriousness, but the substance, you know. Which I guess the Best Animated Oscar, a lot of the time, just... Yeah, a lot of the certainly coming from the US, that the animated films wouldn't be what you call weighty films or serious or substantial films, if you know what I mean. So this possibly was the only one of that sort of type of film in the category. And, you know, they always love a bit of Miyazaki, especially if he's threatening to retire again.
Again.
Which I don't think he is now. I think he said he's doing another one, but I don't know.
It was also quite an interesting year on the international side of things, wasn't it? Because we had for Japan we had a film directed by a German.
That's true. Yeah.
And the winner was I mean, it's down on as a UK production, but I believe it's a UK Polish production. But predominantly in German, which won it, but of course is by a British director. It's a sort of a bit of a strange time for international film.
No, I
and
know
what's
you
being
mean.
actually kind of proposed there.
Yeah, it's always a funny one when you try to decide whether a film should be described as being from a certain country because it's cultural, or is it because of the filmmaker, or is it just because of where the financing comes from, which is technically the correct way to do it. But it gives you some weird quandaries of where films come from, like Tiger Stripes being a Taiwanese film, you know, for example, which it's clearly not. So
well, that's sort of co-production thing as well.
Exactly. So, but whoever, even if you have, you know, if you look at any film which has like 4 co-producing countries, whichever one has the highest percentage. So it's, I don't know. So it's an endless debate. We used to get this a lot, especially with Old Chinese Visual Festival, where some purists would say, "Oh, you're screening French films this year, are you?" And knowing what they say, just ignore them and just go, "Oh, are we? I didn't see any. Which French language films are we seeing?" And you go, "Oh, no, we mean French films. Hey, wink, wink, because shut up. You know, I know what you're saying, and it doesn't." So I don't know. It's an interesting debate as to how you allocate where a film actually comes from. I think in most cases there's a way, you know, to be fairly clear about it. And like I say, no one's going to call Tiger Stripes a Taiwanese film. Even that other one of the other ones which is on Amazon, which it's a horror folklore one you've seen, which I haven't seen. Something about
My Mother's Skin.
Yeah, I think that's got about 6 countries attached to it or something. So, but,
I mean, it's not uncommon, is it? And I think the other part of that is that certain countries, to get that funding, need a certain amount of artistic input. So definitely, if something is co-funded by France, there will be quite significant input from. It might be a cinematographer, it might be a composer, it might be the editing, and you know, and that makes sense. But so many other ones are just there with the money.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and it does vary. I mean, the Taiwan Content Agency does require some input into it, but it depends country to country. But yeah, I agree. So it's an interesting time or a complicated time, but most of the time you can still figure out, or no one's, unless they're being really arsey about it, no one's really going to be that pedantic to insist. I don't know, that's not a film.
I guess it just kind of questions the whole, you know, and international. Does the the meaning of that award, really, international, which always has been a bit, probably not the best phrase, but kind of ghettoises foreign language films.
True.
And then it's actually some of these films, like the one that won Zone of Interest this year, has broken out into Best Feature Film, and we had Parasite several years ago. So it's like, well, okay, if it's if it's a nominee for Best Feature Film, what are you doing having this separate category? It seems somewhat has always been reductive, but then now it's kind of almost feels a bit misused as well.
I think it's probably because we look at it from an international perspective, whereas for the Oscars being, they're still mainly
the
for
Academy.
The Academy, they still are mainly both the Academy for like the more American audience, so it comes from that perspective, whereas we were kind of, to an extent, we're from the outside looking in on them. I guess. So whether you say international is probably closer to the meaning of it, what it is, than. But I know what you mean. It seems weird when you're having films and overlapping, in more than one category, as we do continue to see now. So I don't really. Yeah, it's a strange one. But then again, it's only the Oscars. They're just a bit of fun.
Yeah. Should we get on with the streamers then? Yes.
Okay. First off, we're going to have one from Shudder, because it's very rare to get something from Shudder, and that's our old friend Uzumaki, from back in 2000.
Spiral.
AKA Spiral.
At least on the manga.
On the manga, it's Spiral, but it's maybe because there's too many other English films with the name Spiral.
And there's the one of the Ring.
One of the Ring books, and then adaptations called. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's Uzumaki. You can certainly say it's not a generic title, not a very generic film. And we've spoken about it before in our Junji Ito podcast at length, but it's.
Do we know what kind of quality it is? Because I seem to remember the DVD being pretty murky on that one.
No, this doesn't. I had a quick check. I didn't watch it all the way through, but no, it definitely looked. Watching it on my 4K TV, it definitely didn't look as blurry as I'd have remembered it being. And I think it's got a sort of bit of a weird, not soft focus, but soft lensing to it. But it didn't. It looked not remastered, put it that way, but it didn't look like a crappy DVD. Put it that way. Which is a little bit strange, I guess, because that makes it. I was going to say it's a very random edition. Especially is being added not because it's like a new version or a restored version, and it's the only Japanese film which has appeared this month. And quite often, as we know, they'll not curate things together, but most platforms seem to at least have some reason, however weird or tangential it is. But this is just I don't know. It's a welcome addition, but a strange one, because we've not really. After when we talked about Junji, because it was that, the anime series on Netflix, but that's not led to any rush of content, based around his work or anything.
This seems random. It's definitely not trying to pick up on that, or
for sure,
or any of the other, because there were some other things that we talked about back then that were meant to be happening. I haven't seen.
Because Uzumaki itself, I suppose, there's another anime coming which has been in the work for years from Adult Swim, which is coming some spiral into horror. And I've seen little clips from it in black and white, looking like the manga, but I've never seen that it's actually finished or come out. And there was a Tomiya remake or series, whatever it was going to be. Which had old Alexandra Aja attached to it for a while, but again, you're right. I've not heard anything about that for years, and we were probably some of the only people still talking about it. But you can see. I guess it's he is a bit. He's not quite. He's got a lot of gore and grotesquerie in his work, but it's not quite enough to make him, sort of extreme horror type, and he's too weird to be a normal horror type. So it's. I don't know. I can see why he's a tough one to adapt. Or to adapt into sort of more mainstreamy type of thing, whether it's for streaming or cinema and stuff. And Uzumaki, I guess, is a pretty good example of why. I really like it, but it's very anecdotal. It does sort of jump. It just takes a few good bits from the series, from the manga, and just.
As I remember, the manga was still going on. It was one of those where it was still happening.
That's
before.
Right. Yeah.
So he kind of took a few episodes from the manga, but I think he hadn't even got halfway through the.
You'd never be able to film where it goes. That's one of the few manga I've actually read, and you'd never really be able to film that easily where it ends up going.
No,
not because of gore again, just because of the sheer weirdness.
Wackiness.
Yeah, it's proper nuts where it goes.
Yeah.
So, who knows? Maybe if this animated this series ever comes out, and it's something we get to see, maybe as an animation, maybe we'll get to see that. But who knows?
I suspect from what we've seen, it's going to be very much a frame for panel type adaptation, though, which doesn't, to my mind, add much to the enjoyment of reading the manga. But we will see.
We'll see. Anyway, that's one from Shudder, so that was nice to see. So let's go to old Amazon next, which as usual I've dug and delved around to actually find stuff on there. And the first one I'll mention is Doctor, a Korean horror film of 2013. It's a Korean horror film by a guy called Kim Sung-hong, which is not... It's not a name I actually recognise, but I sort of looked into who he was. And he did the 2001 film Say Yes, which was Third Window, put out way back when. You remember they dabbled in a few Japanese ones. It's got old Park Jun-hoon in it. It's a serial killer one about a young couple who are arguing, pick up a hitchhiker who proceeds to like torment and torture them, and then as I remember, one of them has to say yes to letting him kill them to end the suffering. So fun times. But I remember it being good though. It was pretty, not derivative, but pretty familiar. But I remember it being quite a tightly done, sort of not quite Hitchcock, but that kind of style. And he also did The Hole back in 1997, which is it's kind of domestic thriller. It's one of those ones I kind of got not tricked into buying, but I bought the Hong Kong DVD of it because it was Category 3 rated. And then the front cover made it look like it was going to be something very nasty, and it wasn't, to be honest. It was my fault for being suckered in. It had a very bright red cover with someone screaming on it, I remember. But in 1997, I mean, it was kind of just before the sort of newer Korean wave of stuff actually really started hitting everybody. So that and his work kind of disappeared off most folks' radars. He's never been held up as a cult favourite director. And Doctor was actually the last film of his I can find. I believe he's still with us, so to speak, but it seems to be his last film. I mean, but given his background, it sounds like it's worth a watch. About a crazy doctor does plastic surgery experiments and meets a woman obsessed with having the perfect body. Apparently ran into some issues. The lead actor, Kim Chan-wang, who's very popular, he's also a singer and DJ. Apparently he afterwards trash-talked the film, saying he didn't know why he made it, basically. And the actress did quite a few, apparently, graphic nude scenes in it. She wasn't happy later either. So it doesn't seem to exactly set the heather alight, as we'd say in Scotland. But
and that might be why the director has retracted into probably some sort of academic career or something like that.
He's quite an older fellow though. I think he is like in his late 60s or was at least. So, but I don't know. It's only 97 minutes, so it's probably quite an interesting one to check out. But not as interesting as Suddenly in Dark Night, aka Suddenly in the Dark, another Korean one from 1981. So, and that's pretty rare to get like an old Korean horror appearing on a platform like this, and it looks restored.
So I think it did get some sort of release, like
it did
about 5 or 6 years ago.
It did
Blu-ray. So I presume this is sort of off the back of that.
Whether officially or unofficially, it's hard.
Well, that's a question.
It wasn't released in the UK. It was just the US one from Mondo Macabro. So I'm guessing it's that version. But yes, it's probably one that might not be there by the time you listen to this. Who knows? But I think I'd like to check it out. I mean, we don't get to see too many of these older, Korean horror films before, like as we were just mentioning, then sort of late 1990s.
Korean wave, yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen a couple of interesting-ish ones back from my Yes Asia days where they got special releases, and there's stuff like the early version of The Housemaid. But we don't get to see too many of them, so I'm quite interested to see this. And it's about a killer doll and weird visions. And the director, I have actually heard of, like Ko Young-nam, he's not a very well-known name as such, but he was a very, very prolific genre director in Korea from the early 60s onwards. He did a lot of horror, a lot of dark suspense films, and he did quite a few martial arts films, several with old Luwih, like a Deadly Kick in the mid-70s. And I've seen a couple of festivals over the years saying they want to do retrospectives of his work, but they've never been able to get the screening materials. So like a lot of those older Korean films, especially the genre ones, they just disappeared, weren't archived or saved. So actually having this on there on Amazon in this version, whether official or unofficial, it was definitely one of the more sort of surprisingly interesting additions I've seen to the Amazon library for a while. So I'll definitely check that out, even just out of interest. So I'll give that a review too. A couple from Indonesia, and there'll be more from on Netflix from Indonesia as well. But for these two, I got to say, my pronunciation's not gonna cut it. I mean, the first one may be slightly better. Try not to say this in a Scottish accent because it'll sound terrible, sound rather offensive. But Kuntilanak 3, there we go. It's obviously the third in what's a popular series. The other ones aren't on there, I haven't seen them. Completely random addition. It's linked to the Pontianak folk legend, which I have heard of, which is across the whole like Malaysia, Indonesia region. And it's kind of a mix of like the usual sort of vengeful female long-haired ghost wearing white, but it's also kind of a variation on the vampire theme. As well, this legend. So, but yeah, the first one, there was a film in 2006 which was released in the West as The Chanting, which I actually do remember the video, like a video cover, DVD cover rather, for, because it made it look like it was a Western film. And I didn't see it, but I remember it quite well. The cover, the faces. I'm not going to say it'd been altered, but it was certainly going out of its way to make it look like a slasher film. But yeah, it was remade in 2017, sequel in 2019, and this one is 2022. And these three are all directed by Rizval Mantonovavi, who's done quite a lot of other horrors, which all look very similar covers, to be honest. And he's also an incredibly prolific music video director. But it looks like a modern spin on this. I mean, and these kind of films come up a lot for us, I think, increasingly on the podcast. The more sort of commercial end of the Southeast Asian horror, away from the Impetigores and the Satan Slaves and the more interesting ones, I guess, which make it to the festival circuit. And this looks very much like one of them. Seems to involve students and curses. It wasn't very well reviewed, but it was very popular. There's a lot of really good Indonesian folk horror or commercial horror out there, so I don't think I'll rush towards this one. And the next one, I'm going to really struggle to say, KKKN, the Desa Penari, Luwih, Dowo, Luwih, Medeni, which, apologies for that. And it's more...
What does that translate as?
I don't know, but it's the third in the series. This one as well. It's by a guy called Awi Suridawi, and he also did a film called Death Whisper in 2019, which, going by how generic that title is, hard to say if I've seen it. I mean, the trailer for this KKN, I'll just call it, looks okay. It's great original plotline. Enrolled in a community service program, 6 college students face a haunting mystery in a remote village involving a mesmerizing local dancer. I don't know. Honestly, the problem is, like, what context would we have for watching this? The trailer looks okay, but if it's a third in the series, or even if you had to look it up and find it's a third of the series, and I'm not saying for a second it should have a more obvious English name for it or anything, but it's just, I don't really get why Amazon would be putting something like that on there, or whoever's uploading it to Amazon. I mean, most of the time on Netflix and stuff, or as I've said with Shudder, like, you get some kind of context or purpose for putting the third film up there. It's not even like, the Rope Curse or the Bridge Curse, where you can see the others in the series at least. But I mean, who's going to come to this film, an incredibly long title, no attempt to translate it or even give it a fake name like The Chanting? It's part 3. It's just, I don't know. It's interesting. I have no idea why it's there. I guess maybe in Indonesian horror completists, but and that's it for Amazon. There's not really anything else I could see on there. Not even some more, weird uploads of old martial arts films this month. So not too much. But for Netflix, I can start with Korea, I suppose. We've got coming soon is another Their Productions called Officer Black Belt, an action comedy. I don't want to sound too negative, but there's no one of any massive interest in there, certainly to me, or certainly not bigger names which we'd have covered much before. Directed by Kim Ji-hwan, done quite a few films across a range of genre. He did a horror which I have seen, and I think I reviewed for old Beyond Hollywood, but lost a review for The Divine Fury. When we had do you remember we had like a sort of brief period where we were getting quite a few Korean horrors which sort of dealt with Catholicism and because there was like the priests, right, the possessed. There was quite a few of these films, and most of them were actually pretty interesting. Seeing that kind of mix of Western style horror with sort of Korean cultural stuff. So yeah, but if I can find my review, I will try and put it back up again for The Divine Fury. But he did do Midnight Runners in 2017, which I did review for the kicks and gave 3.5 stars, which is a pretty standard score for a Korean film, like an action comedy about two young fellas.
I remember that. Actually, I mean, it was and that's a fair 3.5, but it was actually quite enjoyable, as I remember, for that sort of thing. Yeah, I was going to say, because actually that's what's. I mean, without kind of looking into the details on this, that's the first thing that sprang to mind with this film. So I expect this is very much in the same region, which is which is no bad thing. I mean, it's fairly kind of enjoyable, no brain required type jaunt. But yeah, I remember that one actually enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would, actually, for Midnight Runners. Yeah, and you're right, 3.5 doesn't mean a bad score. I mean, that's usually the score, especially when I was reviewing stuff for Yes Asia, where I was getting so many of the very, very similar types of films together. So, you get a film which was perfectly well made, enjoyable and stuff, but it was just too similar to other stuff. So it doesn't mean it's 3.5 doesn't mean it's a bad film. If anything, it would be above average, but it's probably above average, but a bit familiar or a bit generic. And you're right. I mean, this is an action comedy, but a martial artist who works in a restaurant but always wants to help people and tries to join the police force, says managing violent offenders. So it's got Kim Woo-bin in it, who's in the Alienoid films, which I've not seen. Have you seen the Alienoid films? Either of them? No.
I quite like. I mean, people always said good things about them. I mean, they didn't really get very well, explained. I would say in their Western press releases when the first one when it played or got released, not in the UK but other festivals, and they didn't really do a good job of not just kind of explaining what it was about, but in making it actually sound not a chaotic mess. To be honest, but people have seen them. Everybody seems to speak very well of them. So and the second one is now kind of it's been released in Korea, but it's making its way out to the festival. So we'll probably see both of those kind of turning up again. I'm sure. But if we get a proper chance to watch the two of them, especially now that and it is a direct sequel, I believe I'd quite fancy seeing the two of them back to back. So anyway, we'll see. So also from Korea is My Name is Lo Ki-wan, and it's a romantic drama based on a popular novel called I Met Lo Ki-wan by the author Cho Hee-jin, published in 2019. It's about a North Korean defector who travels alone to Belgium, and he meets a former Korean-Belgian athlete of some sort, and they help each other through tough times. And it's a Netflix production shot in Hungary, and it looks pretty generic. I think it
sounds a bit like they're trying to cash in on the old Crash Landing on You TV series and stuff like that.
I agree.
That has been reasonably popular, especially as that's on Netflix.
Yes, absolutely. So it sounds, the immigrant angle, the different setting, makes it sound interesting enough. But again, it's a debut director, Kim Hee-jin, who also wrote it, so I don't really have too much context. Got pretty good reviews because it's been on the platform since the 1st of March, so enough time, especially the European critics seem to have liked it quite a lot, as in non-UK, unfortunately. But but again, 2 hours 15 minutes long, so that's always a bit of a red flag, personally, for me anyway. So I can't really. If it was a romantic drama like this, it would have to be pretty short for me to jump into it. 2 hours 15 for this kind of thing just doesn't. I don't know. It just puts me off that kind of running time, to be honest. But I don't know if there's anyone for the site who's more attuned to that kind of thing. It wouldn't be too. It would be quite interesting one to get somebody's take on it. Put it that way. Just probably not my own immediate take on it. But finally, to mention from Korea, we've got the upcoming series Parasite the Grey, which lands on the 5th of April. And it seems to be a mixture. It's not quite a remake of the films or a new adaptation of the manga directly. I'm not really familiar with the manga, but I did see the two 2014 adaptations, Parasite Part 1 and 2, which was with old Shota Somientai, who was in pretty much everything. There was a period.
There was a point where he was absolutely everything. He was starting to get quite annoying by his.
He was. Yeah, I think it's fair to say. I'm not sure if he's grown up. Maybe he's matured into other stuff. But.
Well, and then as he sort of faded out, he actually, I think, started to become quite a much more interesting character actor and doing supporting roles.
Oh, fair play.
And he stopped annoying me, but I haven't really seen him in a lot of stuff since. But yeah, it was just absolutely, and a lot of stuff that was. I mean, just before then, there was a lot of stuff that was released by Third Window because they saw it. He sort of became a little bit of a poster boy for them.
He did. Yeah.
And yeah, I wasn't a big fan of. I think it would be fair to say I wasn't a big fan of a lot of those films.
Well, I mean, as you say, he was being cast in pretty similar types of roles. A lot of, as happens with young, popular actors anyway. So, but yeah, I hadn't realised that the Parasite films were directed by Takashi Yamazaki, who, of course, did the low budget film that could Godzilla -1. So I didn't realise it was that plucky indie filmmaker. But yeah, there's not many details on this adaptation, even though it's out in a few weeks at the time of recording. But it's good enough trailer. But it seems to have shifted to a female lead character. I mean, if you remember the films, it was old Shota and the parasite took over his hand and they talked to each other and stuff. So it seems to keep that concept and the concept of the parasites being in people and suddenly turning into monsters as they're slowly going about some conspiracy to take over, but it seems to have a female lead, but more of like an investigative narrative. But I think for me the main question will be whether it's actually gory or not, because the Japanese ones were fairly gory, at least. I believe I was told it had been toned down from the manga, which was very gory, but we'll see with the Korean one. I mean, as we know, K-series, as they would be called, can lean a lot more into the melodrama. I think we're not underselling them to say that, but and also as well,
because lean into the gore though, they're pretty well in there.
On the series, sometimes a bit, I suppose. Yeah. But I think for this, though, the main thing will still be to see if Netflix cancel it immediately. As if they do it.
It's a series that needs 3 seasons. Oh, it's been cancelled.
Yeah. Well, what was that one? Oh, The Brother's Son, which has came up a couple of times, and we've always said, "Oh, yeah, it looks good." Cancelled. Not watching it now. Because it was supposed to be a continuing story, so classic Netflix. Anyway, from Japan this month we've got The Parades, which is another one from the director Michihito Fuji. Probably won't remember the name, but we've talked about him quite a lot. And he does a lot of stuff for Netflix directly, like The Village, Yakuza Family, and he seems to make a lot of these kind of it's maybe what we'd have called in the old days like a TV movie. I guess films which are made for Netflix expressly quite quickly and kind of churned out, I think we can say, going by.
But that's kind of picking up on a production model that's already in Japan, isn't it? For
yes.
A lot of the big channels. So it's really just whether it's done in collaboration with them or it's outside of that. It's still picking up on that same model. It's it's Netflix now rather than.
Sure. Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I've only watched 1 or 2 of his films, not even the 2 we just mentioned, like Village or Yakuza Family, but he seems to be one of those guys who trots along getting bad reviews, nothing getting great reviews. So, again, TV movie style. And this one, there's a woman searching for her son after some kind of disaster. I think the synopsis calls it devastating calamity, and then she kind of realizes she's a ghost herself.
The calamities.
Exactly, it's a nice way of putting it, but it's and again, it just looks like a TV film from the trailer I watched. Very sentimental. It looks like a Koreeda Light, I would guess, because he did that. What was the one he did, which had a similar-ish? It's got a really stupid pun. Afterlife, but it's after space life, right? It's 2 words.
I don't know that one.
I don't think there's a calamity in it, but yeah. Anyway, I mean, this doesn't look great. It seems there's a bit of like Japanese cinema referential side to it, but it seems to be all about ghosts helping each other to move on and to come to terms and be nice to each other. So 2 hours 12 minutes long. Yeah, so it just feels like content. I mean, as you said, if it's just adapting to that production model, which is already there, and just making more stuff for Netflix, I guess. Kind of blurring the line between whether it's a film or a TV special.
Yeah.
In that respect. But too long, anyway, 2 hours 12. But I mean, speaking of long, from the Philippines, they've added Shake, Rattle, and Roll Extreme, which is, it sounds, you think, great, nice, like a little Filipino horror anthology, maybe a nice, quick, easy watch. No, 1 hour, 148 minutes.
That's almost 3 feature length.
Absolutely. It's crazy. And it's in 3 directors, 3 films in one almost. So you're right, they could be 3. That's almost like 3 45-minute ones, or give or take. I'm not doing the math, but it's interesting because I've never heard of this, but it's the 16th installment of the Shake, Rattle, and Roll series, and they are filmed. They're not edited together TV programs or anything. It's been 9 years since the 15th film, and been running since 1984. So maybe a bit sort of troublesome night style, though that got to 19. I'm going to say 19 entries. Although there was the other one, Always With You, or Always Be With You, maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, which wasn't technically Troublesome Night, but it was supposed to be like a revival, but then didn't revive it because nobody seemed to care about it anymore. But yeah, 3 stories, 3 directors, very popular domestically, got excellent reviews when it was released over there, and the stories sound quite fun. You've got like some rage zombies, an Aswang shapeshifter curse involving influencers, and one about a demonic 1970s children's TV show toy called Gary the Goat. And the trailer's good. It's just 2.5 hours, but I guess you could watch it in 3 parts.
Yeah,
I mean,
especially if they're not connected.
Yeah, I've not seen
between them, so
there's nothing which seems to suggest that they're not like Crypt Keeper hosting the stories together or anything like that. So,
or some looping back like Twilight Zone the movie.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything as complicated as that in there. So, I don't know. I'm intrigued by it, especially since it's genuinely supposed to be good. So I might dip into it, but it's just, I don't know. There's such a trend of things becoming longer and longer on Netflix, and I mean, the next one
everywhere.
Well, everywhere, but I think especially on streaming content for whatever reason that is. But it's not really my thing. But the same for the next film, Taiwan film, which I definitely want to watch, called The Pig, the Snake, and the Pigeon, which I'd heard about for a while before and heard it was going to be good. But it's again, it's about 2 hours 15 minutes. Dark comedy. It's a Taiwan film, but it's directed by the Hong Kong director Wong Ching-po, who you'd know from like Revenge, a Love Story, Fubo, Mob Sister, and he did a lot of good genre films, but were quite often like a bit out there, a bit sort of philosophical or a bit weird art house territory. About a dying hitman who wants to do something decent, who decides to kill the country's 2 most wanted criminals before he snuffs it himself. Apparently, from what I've heard about it, the tone shifts a lot from like comedy to action to very thoughtful stuff, but also it's got a kind of a feel to a bit of a early 2000s throwback, like the old sort of Bittersweet Life sort of time, that kind of cinema. Got a lot of nominations at the Golden Horse Awards. There are only one for Best Action Choreography, but it's got more nominations coming up at like Taiwan Film Critics Society, Hong Kong Film Awards. So, it's definitely a quality production, but I think, I don't know, I do rabbit on a lot about length for films, but this is, if it was in the cinema, I wouldn't find that a problem. If you say like go and watch a film in the cinema, it's 2 hours 15 minutes long, I'm fine with that. I can sit there quite comfortably, I won't check my phone or anything like that. And if it feels overlong, that's it just is what it is. But I wouldn't be so distracted. But a film which is potentially not slow as such, but maybe is a bit more on the abstract side of things, and with that length of a running time, it's harder to get into it for me as much as it would be in cinema. Even if I sit in like my sort of viewing room / office in the dark, with the TV on, it's still not the same as being in the cinema. So some of these films, I don't know. I think
and yet
shorter.
Streamers seem to think because they don't have to fit. If this film is being released in this way, particularly for TV series, they don't have to fit the kind of classic 45-minute plus adverts model.
Sure.
And that means you have these kind of massively different length of episodes, and that can be good and bad in terms of the story. But this idea of, there's no necessity to edit, and we're seeing that now.
Yes.
That more and more films are easily breaking the 2 hour. All sorts of films, no, not just the kind of classic Korean films, but everything seems to be breaking the 2 hour.
No, absolutely, and I think that's about 5 films I've mentioned so far, which are well over 2 hours. Even in this short chat. So, and it's, don't get me wrong, it's great that these things are coming on Netflix, because something like this, no one in the UK is going to release it in the cinema. So it's not like I'd have a chance to see it in the cinema. And maybe at a festival, I suppose. But so it's a blessing and a curse, because I wouldn't get another chance to see it. But equally, I'm not going to get to see it properly. To that extent. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just there's a difference between stuff that's designed for home consumption versus stuff which is designed from cinema consumption. Like you say, when there's no, if you're making something, which is more to be watched in the cinema, where the running time has a different effect to how it does at home, then it's.
I think there's this idea that actually, if you're at home, it can be as long as it wants to be. That
seems to be the idea.
Actually, whereas you're saying, and I agree actually that's not the case.
Yeah, because if I'm sure you're exactly the same as me. Like, unlike some heathens who might go to the cinema and their phone, they would check their phone, they would do something in the cinema. I'd never do that. I'm sure you'd never do that. Yeah. But I think it's fair to say, if I'm sitting at home and my phone goes, I will check my phone just because I'm at home. Or I'm in the cinema, I might cross my legs a little bit longer before I'm to rush to the bathroom. Or I might not be bothered to go out and get another beer or something. But if I'm sitting at home watching it, I will just do it. So with the best will in the world, it is just different. And I don't know. It's good that these things become available, but at the same time, there's a line where they're not maybe getting as appreciated as much as they would. But then again, we are, more not film snobs, but what we're saying here probably means nothing to a lot of people who'd be quite happy to stop a film 4 or 5 times during it, and it's absolutely fair enough as well. It's not. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. We all have different ways in which we watch stuff. Like, I could never watch something on a phone, but I totally understand a lot of people do. So
yeah.
I don't know, an interesting debate to which there is no answer, but I will definitely endeavour to watch this one time when I'm the only one in the house, just to double down on the lack of disruption. Okay, a few other bits and pieces on the Southeast Asian side of thing. A couple just to mention briefly. Mansuang from Thailand and Black Rose from Vietnam. It's more interesting to me that they're there rather than actually wanting to watch them. They're both 2023 films. Mansuang is like an investigation into some famous entertainment club of Siam. So a historical setting, lots of traditional Thai song and dance and art. I mean, it looks beautiful or handsome. I guess because I do like using that phrase, a handsome production values. And it seemed to have got great reviews in Thailand, but I couldn't really tell what it was about from the trailer. It seems to be both a queer film, something about colonial themes, but a lot of song and dance without being a musical. So if it was in a festival, and we were at a festival and it was kind of sandwiched in between other films, I would watch it. But this ties into what we were saying just there, I suppose, is I wouldn't commit like just over 2 hours of my life sitting on the sofa to watch it. But if I watched it in the cinema, I'd be more likely to discover something at a festival than I would randomly on Netflix. So But yeah, I mean, same for Black Rose. You know, it's a tragic romance. It touches on social issues. It's only 90 minutes, but again, you know, I wouldn't go out my way to watch something like that. And I do, you know, it would be nice if maybe it's just me not being adventurous enough, but if I do feel like because of the way these things appear on Netflix, I'm kind of losing a sense of, you know, not adventurousness, but of actually taking a chance on something, because there's so much content which is actually coming on there, which is stuff you do want to watch. So why would you choose to watch something you don't really want to watch? If you know what I mean, especially when it's long. So I don't know. Anyways, I'd say it's another debate. But you know, the case in point, like the final two ones for Netflix, are things I'd be much more likely to watch. A couple more Indonesian horrors, again, on the commercial side, the popcorn side, rather than the Joko Anwar type of side. But we've got Indigo, 2023, and it's from Rocky Soraya. Again, I didn't know the name, but there's loads of his films on Netflix. The Doll series, which there's 3 parts of. The Third Eye, which is not connected to the Eye series, which I almost watched once and realised it wasn't connected to the Eye series. And there's other ones he's done as well. But, you know, because they're these more commercial, popcorny Indonesian horrors, I guess, there doesn't ever seem to be a perceived, not link, but perceived link in reception and perception towards these kind of Indonesian films compared to the ones which we've seen so successfully touring the festival, so successfully appearing on Shudder and stuff. It's almost like they're completely, not different genres, but different forms almost, which is interesting. So I have been trying to delve into more of these. You know, mostly with pretty good, pretty fun results. There was that one, what was the one I did last month? Mantra Suragana, with apologies for pronunciation, which was pretty good. And this doesn't sound very different. Indigo apparently refers to the ability to see supernatural beings. It also means being
like
targeted.
a third eye.
It's probably very similar to all of his films. I mean, looking through his filmography, everything seems to be about like this kind of like I can see ghosts or possession or the same kind of similar looking demons and stuff. So so nothing new. It's following a young girl and her younger sister who are afflicted with this and have to figure out who, what, where, why, when. Looks quite J-horror. Looks like there's a lot of The Grudge in the trailer, or definitely a lot of the demons that do appear to be sort of long, black-haired female ghosts wearing white. I don't know. I mean, it's almost 2 hours, but at the same time, because it looks a bit grudgy and stuff, so we always say a lot more, I don't know, forgiving of that kind of thing than we would have been 20 years ago. So this might be like quite comfortable raining outside at night and you can't be bothered going back out to the pub type of film. So maybe. And the other one, Susuk, not to be confused with Suk Suk. The 2019 career drama from Ray Young, whose new film All Shall Be Well is I just reviewed for the Kicks.
And it's very good.
It's very good, yes. Yeah. We both liked it very much, so hopefully that'll get a good international rollout, and hopefully we'll get a chance to screen it through Focus Hong Kong. But we'll see how that unfolds. But Susuk. But Susuk itself is from Gianatti Rona, who, again, not heard of the director, not seen any of his or maybe even her films as director, but interestingly, they were the AD and second unit director on the Raid films, Macabre, Safe Haven, which was the Gareth Evans segment of VHS2, which is still probably the best of any VHS segment. So, you know, a pretty good pedigree behind the camera. And again, I'm not going to surprise you with the plot. A young woman seeks a way to undo a curse upon her estranged sister, who's trapped between life and death, but ends up unleashing havoc in their remote rural village. So.
I hate it when that happens.
It does seem to happen a lot, doesn't it? But from what I've read, it's a very, very chaotic film, which jumps around all over the place, makes no sense, lots of strangeness, randomness and wackiness. Sounds like there's a lot of gore and horror spectacle. It's only 100 minutes long and very fast moving, so I'm definitely going to check this out. It may be foolish, but it sounds like it's a good kind of foolish, so I will pledge to watch that one along with at least some of the others I've mentioned here. So, you know, a review should be coming at some point for that, because, you know, we've had some of these Southeast Asian ones, whether it's Indonesia, Malaysia, or other countries recently, I've seen have generally been very good. So like that Bloodflower, which we talked about in previous episodes. So I'm still quite, I'm not jaded to these films yet. Put it that way. Sooner or later, I will be. But that's it for Netflix. I'm allowed to mention that the Three Body Problem will probably be out. It's on the 21st of March, so it might be out by the time people listen to this. And I believe we're gonna probably cover it in a different episode.
I think so. Yeah.
We'll see after we've watched it. But, a lot of interesting conflicting perspectives out there about it already, so I'm very interested to see it. And that's it for the streamers, so we can jump on to the cinema, starting with Monster, which you can probably say something about, since I really don't like Koreeda.
It's a very good Koreeda film. It is a story told from several perspectives about a kid and about bullying at school. We have our friend, the very talented Sakura Ando in there, who was in Shoplifters. And it's a very, very strong film. A very strong film. I guess we can kind of go on to one of the other things that's coming up a little bit later at the beginning of April, but these films came up at the London Film Festival, and of course we've got the other strong Japanese contender being Evil Does Not Exist.
Oh yeah. Which, if I had to watch one of the two, which one would you tell me to watch? Given that I don't like either of the directors or their films.
I think you probably prefer Evil Does Not Exist.
Okay.
Environmental fable.
Can I guess that Monster isn't... I know it's not a creature feature, obviously, but can I guess it's not really a murder film or anything? I mean, as in like a proper murdery film, not like somebody dies tragedy, or we feel sorry for somebody. Without spoiling, it's not a... But it's not like a... So I asked you this question before about Evil Does Not Exist, and you quite nicely fudged the answer in a way that made it sound interesting. Can you fudge the answer for Monster to make it sound interesting?
It's not a film about murders or about a creature. It's not a creature feature.
Well, okay, but is it metaphorically a creature feature?
We're all creatures, man.
Well, who knows, man? But I'm going to go with that. I will. I'm sure. Evil Doesn't Exist will turn up in the cinema in Glasgow, at least not where I am at the moment. But I will endeavour to watch that. But I will endeavour not to watch Monster, which I will find quite easy to avoid. I was just going to say Monsters from Picture House, and 15th of March, so it'll be out by the time this podcast is out, and Evil Doesn't Exist, the 5th of April, Modern Films.
Yes.
Okay, and what else do we have? Drift is out. Sorry, that didn't mean that sound negative. I said, Drift. Drift is out. And I suppose that ties into something we were saying at the start in terms of where is it from? How do you say where a film is from? Because this is listed as being a French/Greek/UK film. Coming out through Met Film Distribution, 29th of March. First English language film from Anthony Chen. I saw Ilo a long time ago, and I think Chinese Visual Festival actually did a partnership screening with somebody else on it, though I can't quite remember. But I didn't see his last couple of ones, Wet Season or The Breaking Ice. I think Breaking Ice is a 2023 film as well. But
it seems to be seems to be pretty busy with stuff. And he's based in Singapore filmmaker, but based in the UK for an awfully long time, hasn't he?
Yeah, he was certainly based in London. I'm not 100% sure if he still is now, but he definitely was, for quite a while. But he seems to be very much sort of, what's the phrase, like a darling of the critics and of the festival circuit and stuff. So
I didn't see Ilo. I did see Wet Season, and I have to admit I wasn't massively impressed with it. I think story wise, I think it felt a bit awkward, sort of relationship between a teacher and a student. That is. I think a bit dangerous to go near now, even if it's
Yeah.
It doesn't make it any better that it's a female teacher and a male student, but and I don't think it quite got, for me personally, I don't think it quite got past that
Right.
that
No, fair
awkwardness. But also, he as well as those films, he was involved in producing quite a lot of films from Singapore and that area as well, over the last few years as well. Yeah.
Yeah, fair play. I mean, I probably wouldn't check out Drift, to be honest. I'd be more likely to watch The Breaking Ice, just because I know it was another popular one at Cannes last year. So that, but yeah, it's an interesting one that it's actually getting a release in the UK. And to be honest, like, I had to double check, and that's where I saw it was by Anthony Chen. So it doesn't seem to be. I mean, it's only a couple of weeks away from release at the time of recording. It's not getting much of a push, and you'd have thought.
No. I mean, to be honest with you, I hadn't even heard it until just now. So.
Well, there you go. And if we don't know about it, God damn it, how can everyone else? So. So yeah, so fair play. But I'm not gonna rush out and check it out. But if Breaking Ice gets a release, I mean, Wet Season never got a UK release, and from what you're saying, I'm not massively surprised, because I think, those are quite sensitive subjects a lot of the time, and I think the UK can be more sensitive sometimes than other countries.
Yeah.
To like, even by Western, like even the UK compared to say mainland Europe can be more sensitive about those kind of stories.
Definitely.
So it wouldn't surprise me then if that's why it didn't really appear.
So that's on the 29th of March, and also, and again from Modern Films, we've got Ryuichi Sakamoto Opus.
How many? I mean, this one's it's a documentary / concert film. It was last.
It's really a concert film. It's not anything else, and it's shot by Sakamoto's son, who has shot his dad before, actually.
So to speak.
He was on Coda, yes, so to speak. He shot some of Coda as well as a cinematographer. And it is. I mean, as concert films go, it is very, very good. And I think one thing that's sort of slightly fudged in some of the descriptions of the film, but this started out as being filmed over a few days, and then I think parts of it were released online, and I think as sort of a TV special, and then it's been kind of re-edited into this film, and it's kind of nice because it is quite personal. You get up very close with Sakamoto. You kind of really kind of feel his emotion, and there's some very kind of tender parts where you kind of see him really at points kind of really struggling to get through these performances.
Does he know?
He was he was ill at
that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
So he because I mean, you're right. It kind of fudges what it says it's about. But when it says his last concert performance, I assumed it was. I read more into it. I guess just by seeing that. So interesting.
Yeah, and it's got all the lots of the classic music that we know from him so well. So, if you are somebody who loved the soundtrack of Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, or I mean, even kind of steps into some of his kind of Yellow Magic Orchestra tracks as well, then you'll enjoy this. And it is different from those other films that have been much more standard documentaries.
Okay.
And it's interesting that even those, they always had this kind of similar idea that you have quite an extended performance from Sakamoto, and they had a very kind of personal performance. So even that 1980s one that we talked about many podcasts ago, Tokyo Melody, had these very kind of extended pieces of him. So it's actually there is this coda, if you like, between these documentaries of having this personal interaction with Sakamoto, of him virtually kind of playing just for you, and I think you do get that from this film.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
fair enough.
So it is. I mean, it's a beautiful performance of his music, and if you are a fan, and I would think a lot of people, very few people can not be aware of his music. Listen to his podcast at least. Then you should definitely check it out.
No, I mean, music documentary / concert films are still one of the highest earning types of event films which are out there. So I don't know if they're going to tie anything in with it, or if it's just a straightforward cinema release. But they are very popular, this kind of film, even if it just turns out to be mostly concert footage. I imagine a lot of folk probably will go and see it. I suppose for someone like me, to an extent, who's not familiar at all with his music,
I think you'll be more familiar than you think you are. Actually,
that's what I was going to say something similar. Like, I'd be more, in some ways, more likely, because I'm not. If I want to learn about him, I would just watch some stuff on YouTube. But this way, especially seeing it in the cinema, and actually hearing it on not the same as being at the concert, but closer. I think I'd get more out of seeing this film on the big screen. Whereas the documentaries about him, you could just watch in the same way I might watch a documentary on YouTube, Netflix. But this actually, I would think you'll probably benefit more from being seen in the cinema. So
definitely, having seen it on a big screen myself, as part of the London Film Festival, I can only agree. Definitely.
Fair enough. Well, if it does come up here to rural Scotland, I'll check it out. I probably won't hold my breath.
So that's it for now. Don't forget you can find all of our previous podcasts on Apple, Amazon Music, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe now and you'll never miss an episode. But for now, cheers!
Cheers.